Most people crave certainty, clear answers, guaranteed outcomes, a sense that if they plan carefully enough, life will stay manageable. We tell ourselves that certainty equals safety, that knowing what will happen next will finally allow us to relax. But notice what often happens instead. The more we demand certainty, the tighter the mind becomes. Small changes feel threatening. Unexpected delays cause frustration. Anxiety rises, not because something is wrong, but because reality refuses to stay predictable. From a Buddhist perspective, the problem is not uncertainty itself. Life has always been uncertain. The problem is clinging, the quiet insistence that things should go a certain way in order for us to feel okay. This clinging creates constant tension. The mind is always scanning for reassurance, trying to control what cannot be controlled. What feels like protection slowly becomes exhaustion. What if the need for certainty is not keeping you safe, but quietly draining your energy? In this video, we'll explore how releasing the demand for certainty can soften the mind, restore flexibility, and open a more peaceful way of moving through life, without giving up responsibility or direction. We live in a time with more information than ever before. We can track, predict, plan, and optimize nearly every aspect of life. And yet, anxiety continues to rise. This is not because people are careless. It's because the mind is trying harder than ever to feel safe. Planning, predicting, and controlling often feel like protection. If I prepare enough, nothing will go wrong. If I think through every outcome, I won't be surprised. If I stay in control, I'll be okay. But notice how this shows up in everyday life. Over-planning small decisions, feeling unsettled when schedules change, a quiet discomfort when things don't unfold as expected. Even moments of rest are filled with mental checking. What's next? What could go wrong? What still isn't resolved? From a Buddhist perspective, this tightening makes sense. The mind is seeking stability in a world that is constantly changing. It wants certainty in an impermanent environment, and control appears to offer that certainty. The problem is that control never actually delivers what it promises. No amount of planning can remove uncertainty. No amount of prediction can guarantee outcomes. The mind may feel temporarily reassured, but the tension quickly returns. So the cycle continues. More control, more effort, more clenching. We cling to certainty not because it works, but because uncertainty feels threatening. The mind mistakes control for safety, even as it quietly increases anxiety. Seeing this clearly is the first step toward loosening the grip. Holding tightly to control has a cost, and it shows up both physically and mentally. The body stays tense. The mind rarely rests. Even when things are going well, there is an underlying pressure to keep them that way. Over time, this leads to exhaustion. Burnout becomes common, not because life is demanding, but because the mind never stops resisting change. Decision-making becomes harder. Choices feel heavier. The fear of making the wrong move creates paralysis. When control dominates, adaptability weakens. Unexpected changes feel overwhelming instead of workable. Creativity shrinks because failure feels dangerous. Growth slows because stepping into the unknown feels unsafe. Spontaneity disappears. Life begins to feel narrow, rigid, and overly serious. Even moments meant for joy are monitored, managed, and mentally evaluated. From a Buddhist perspective, this is where suffering deepens. Pain is a natural part of life. Discomfort, loss, uncertainty will arise. But struggle comes from resisting what is already happening. The mind argues with reality instead of meeting it. The more we fight life's movement, the heavier everything feels. What could have been a challenge becomes a burden. What could have been a moment becomes a problem to solve. The tighter you grip life, the less alive it feels. Recognizing this cost is not meant to create guilt. It is meant to open the possibility of another way, one that involves less force, less resistance, and more ease. At the heart of Buddhist wisdom is a simple but challenging truth. Everything changes. Circumstances shift. Emotions rise and fall. Outcomes unfold in ways we cannot fully predict. Nor nothing in life remains fixed for long. Not success, not failure, not clarity, not confusion. Yet much of our suffering comes from wishing this were not so. The mind longs for certainty in a world that is constantly moving. It wants guarantees, solid ground, clear answers that will not change tomorrow. But when we demand certainty from an impermanent reality, friction is inevitable. Life moves, and the mind resists. That resistance is where tension is born. Buddhism calls this impermanence. It is not meant to be pessimistic. It is meant to be honest. When we see that change is natural, we stop taking it personally. We stop treating uncertainty as a problem to solve and begin to recognize it as the nature of experience itself. Alongside impermanence comes the teaching of non-attachment. This is often misunderstood. Non-attachment does not mean indifference. It does not mean withdrawing from life or caring less. It means engaging fully without clinging to outcomes. You still act, you still plan, you still care, but you no longer demand that life unfold according to a fixed script. Attachment says, this must go my way for me to be okay. Non-attachment says, I will do my best and remain open to what follows. This shift changes everything. When you are attached to results, every uncertainty feels threatening. Every delay feels intolerable. Every change feels like a loss of control. But when attachment softens, uncertainty becomes workable. Disappointment becomes information. Change becomes movement rather than danger. Letting go, in this sense, is not giving up. It is unclenching. It is releasing the rigid grip that says, only this outcome is acceptable. It is learning to meet life with flexibility instead of force. Think of holding water in your hands. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips away. When you relax your grip, the water remains. Life is much the same. Non-attachment allows you to move with life rather than against it. You respond instead of react. You adjust instead of collapse. You remain present instead of constantly bracing for what might go wrong. This is where peace begins to emerge, not because life becomes predictable, but because the mind stops demanding that it be. Peace does not come from controlling life. It comes from flowing with it. When you accept impermanence and release rigid attachment, something softens inside. The body relaxes. The mind opens. You begin to trust your ability to meet whatever arises, rather than trying to prevent it from happening at all. And in that trust, a quieter, steadier form of freedom appears. One that does not depend on certainty, but on presence. Many people resist the idea of surrender because it sounds like giving up. The mind equates letting go with losing control, becoming passive, or allowing life to push you around. But Buddhist wisdom points to a very different understanding. Surrender is not collapse. It is flexibility. Think about moments of true effectiveness and ease. Athletes often describe their best performances as happening when they stop forcing and enter a state of flow. Artists create their most authentic work when they release rigid expectations and allow creativity to move through them. Innovators succeed not by controlling every outcome, but by adapting quickly when conditions change. In each case, strength does not come from tight control. It comes from responsiveness. From a Buddhist perspective, true strength is the ability to meet reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. When you let go of rigid demands, awareness takes the lead. Instead of forcing outcomes, you listen. Instead of resisting change, you adjust. This does not mean you abandon intention. You still choose direction. You still act with care and effort, but you stop insisting that life unfold in one exact way. That insistence is what drains energy and creates suffering. Letting go creates space, and in that space, clarity appears. You see options you couldn't see before. You respond rather than react. You move with life instead of against it. You don't lose direction when you let go. You gain responsiveness. And responsiveness is what allows you to remain steady in a world that is constantly shifting. Letting go begins not with action, but with noticing. You don't have to force yourself to release control. You only need to become aware of when the mind is clenching. Start by noticing moments of inner tightening. It might show up as tension in the chest, a shallow breath, or a restless urge to figure everything out immediately. These physical signals often appear before you even recognize the thought behind them. Then gently identify the demand underneath. It often sounds like, "I need to know how this will turn out," or "I need to control this so I can feel okay." Simply naming this pattern brings awareness to it. Next, pause, not to fix the situation, not to resolve uncertainty, just to stay present. Allow yourself to feel the discomfort of not knowing without rushing to escape it. Soften the body, relax the shoulders, let the breath slow. This physical softening sends a signal to the mind that it does not need to fight the moment. From a Buddhist perspective, awareness naturally loosens attachment. You don't have to force certainty away. When the clenching is seen clearly, it begins to relax on its own. You don't have to release certainty. Just stop clenching it. With practice, this simple noticing creates space, and in that space, ease begins to replace tension, one moment at a time. Letting go does not require dramatic gestures or major life changes. In fact, real freedom is trained in ordinary moments, the small, everyday situations where the mind usually tightens without being noticed. Begin with low-risk uncertainties. Allow plans to adjust without immediately trying to correct them. If something runs late, notice the urge to control the timeline. If a schedule changes, observe the impulse to resist or complain. Instead of forcing things back into place, practice staying present with the shift. In conversations, allow moments to unfold naturally. Notice how often the mind wants to steer, explain, or reach a specific outcome. Practice listening without planning your response. Let silence appear without rushing to fill it. This is a subtle but powerful form of surrender. Another simple practice is allowing yourself not to have immediate answers. When faced with uncertainty, resist the urge to resolve everything right away. Let questions remain open. This trains trust, not in outcomes, but in your ability to meet whatever arises. From a Buddhist perspective, freedom grows through repeated non-clinging. Each time you allow a moment to be as it is, without tightening around it, you weaken the habit of control. The nervous system learns that uncertainty is not dangerous. The mind learns that it does not need to brace against life. These moments may seem small, but they accumulate. Over time, you become more flexible, more patient, and less reactive. Life still moves unpredictably, but you move with it instead of against it. Freedom is not built in dramatic breakthroughs. It is trained in ordinary moments, again and again. And as these small acts of surrender become familiar, something shifts. Life feels less heavy. You trust yourself more, and peace begins to feel natural, not because everything is certain, but because you no longer need it to be. When the grip of certainty loosens, life begins to feel different. Not perfect, not predictable, but lighter. Anxiety no longer dominates every decision because the mind is no longer bracing against what might happen next. There is more inner space, more room to breathe, think, and respond. In an unclenched life, adaptability replaces rigidity. When plans change, you adjust instead of collapse. When uncertainty appears, you meet it with curiosity rather than fear. This flexibility doesn't make you passive. It makes you resilient. You stop wasting energy resisting reality and begin using it wisely. From a Buddhist perspective, peace is not found in certainty. It is found in openness. Openness to success and failure. Openness to gain and loss. Openness to the unfolding of life without demanding guarantees. When the mind stops insisting on control, trust naturally grows. Not blind trust, but confidence in your ability to meet whatever arises. Purpose also becomes clearer. Instead of constantly trying to secure the future, you act with intention in the present. You make choices aligned with values rather than fear. Life feels richer because you are fully engaged, not perpetually guarding against disappointment. Possibility expands when resistance fades. New paths appear because you are no longer locked into one expected outcome. You begin to notice opportunities that were invisible before, not because life changed, but because your relationship with it did. When you stop fighting the flow, life begins to carry you. You don't need life to be predictable in order to live well. You only need awareness, flexibility, and trust in your capacity to respond. Letting go of the need to know is not a one-time decision. It is a gentle, ongoing practice. Each moment offers another chance to soften the grip, to meet uncertainty with presence instead of fear. Over time, this changes how you experience everything. If this reflection resonated with you, take a moment to notice where you might be clenching today and where you can allow a little more ease. You're welcome to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you'd like to continue exploring Buddhist wisdom for clarity and calm in an uncertain world, subscribe to the channel.